My favorite park is a place that always makes me happy. It is not very big, but it is beautiful and full of life. I go there often, especially on weekends or when I need to relax. The park is about 10 minutes from my home, and I like to walk there in the morning when the air feels cool and fresh. When I enter the park, I always feel a quiet joy in my heart. The sound of birds singing welcomes me, and the soft rustle of the trees makes me feel calm. The park has many tall trees that give shade on sunny days, and the grass is soft and green. There is a small pond in the middle, and the water reflects the blue sky like a mirror. Ducks swim slowly on the surface, and sometimes small fish jump out of the water for a second before disappearing again. Every time I see them, I smile. The smell of flowers floats in the air, and the sound of children laughing fills the space. The park feels like a living painting, full of color, sound, and movement. One Saturday morning, I decided to visit my favorite park early, just after sunrise. The streets were still quiet, and the light was soft and golden. I carried my camera with me because I wanted to take some pictures of the morning sky. When I arrived at the park, the gate was open, and a light breeze touched my face. I walked on the small path covered with fallen leaves. They made a soft sound under my shoes. I could see a few people jogging and a couple walking hand in hand. A man was walking his dog, and the dog wagged its tail happily when it saw me. I waved and smiled. The man said, "Good morning," and I said, "Good morning, too." I walked toward the pond and sat on a wooden bench nearby. The air smelled of fresh grass and dew. I took out my camera and started taking pictures. The sunrise was beautiful. The sky was a mix of pink and orange colors, and the water in the pond looked like melted gold. Suddenly, I heard the quacking of ducks. A group of them swam close to me, hoping for food. I reached into my bag and found a small piece of bread I had brought for them. I tore it into small pieces and threw them into the water. The ducks fought gently for each piece, and their playful movements made me laugh. Behind me, I heard the sound of footsteps. When I turned around, I saw a little girl watching the ducks, too. She looked about 5 years old and was holding a red balloon. Her mother stood beside her, smiling. The little girl said shyly, "They are so cute." I nodded and said, "Yes, they are very cute and funny." The girl giggled and asked if she could feed them too. I gave her some of my bread and she threw it into the pond. The ducks quickly swam toward her side. The girl clapped her hands and laughed. Her mother thanked me, and they both waved before walking away. That small moment made me feel warm inside. I stayed on the bench for a while, watching the sunlight grow stronger and the park come alive. More people arrived. Some were jogging, some were walking their dogs, and others were stretching on the grass. I saw a group of older men sitting near a tree playing chess. They looked very focused but also happy. Every time someone made a good move, the others clapped or laughed. I walked closer to watch them for a moment. One of the men looked up and smiled at me. He said, "Do you play chess?" I said, "Not very well." He laughed and said, "Then you can learn by watching us." I stood there for a few minutes, watching their game. The way they talked and teased each other reminded me of my grandfather and his friends. After a while, I thanked them and walked toward the small hill at the end of the park. From the top of that hill, you can see the whole park. It is my favorite place to sit and think. I climbed slowly, listening to the sound of the wind in the trees. When I reached the top, I sat on the grass and looked around. The view was amazing. The pond, the trees, the people, and the blue sky all came together like a perfect picture. I lay back on the grass and closed my eyes for a few minutes, just listening to the sounds. Birds were singing. A child was blowing bubbles nearby, and the soft music of a street performer's guitar drifted from somewhere near the entrance. I opened my eyes and saw the musician sitting under a big tree. He was an older man with a white beard wearing a brown hat. His music was gentle and full of feeling. I walked closer and listened. He smiled at me while playing. After his song, I clapped and said, "That was beautiful." He thanked me and said he came to the park every Saturday to play music because it made him happy. I said, "Your music makes others happy too." He laughed and said, "That is what music is for." He started another song, and a few children began to dance nearby. The sound of laughter and music filled the air. It felt like magic. After a while, I decided to walk to the small cafe near the park entrance. It is a cozy place where I often go for tea. The cafe has outdoor tables surrounded by flowers. When I arrived, I saw that many seats were taken, but one small table near the window was free. I ordered a cup of hot tea and a muffin. As I waited, I watched people walking by outside. A young couple took selfies near the flower garden. A group of teenagers sat on the grass, eating sandwiches and talking loudly. Two old ladies were walking slowly, holding hands and smiling at each other. It was a picture of peaceful life. My tea arrived, and I took a sip. The warm taste made me feel comfortable. While I was drinking, I noticed a small brown dog sitting outside the cafe, looking lost. It had no collar. It looked at everyone who passed by, wagging its tail as if asking for help. I felt sorry for it and walked outside with a small piece of muffin. I crouched down and held out my hand. The dog came closer carefully and sniffed the food. It ate gently from my hand and looked up at me with kind eyes. I stroked its head softly and said, "Are you lost, little one?" A young woman came running from across the street, calling, "Bella, Bella, where are you?" The dog's ears perked up and it barked once, running toward her. The woman smiled in relief and hugged the dog tightly. She looked at me and said, "Thank you for keeping her safe." I smiled and said, "She's a lovely dog." The woman nodded and said, "She always runs toward this cafe because she likes the smell of food." We both laughed. She waved goodbye and walked away with her dog. That small event made my tea taste even better. After finishing my snack, I walked back into the park. The afternoon sun was warm, but not too hot. Families were having picnics on the grass. Children were playing soccer near the open field. A few people were flying colorful kites, and the sky looked beautiful with the bright shapes moving gently in the wind. I sat near a tree to rest and watched a group of children trying to make a kite fly. The first time, it fell to the ground. The second time, it went up a little and fell again. They laughed each time and kept trying. Finally, after several tries, the kite rose high and stayed in the air. They jumped and shouted with joy. Their laughter was full of life. A little boy turned to me and said proudly, "Look, we did it." I clapped and said, "Great job." He smiled widely and ran back to his friends. I thought about how the park brings people together like that, making strangers smile and cheer for each other. Around 3 in the afternoon, I decided to walk along the path that goes around the pond. The sunlight sparkled on the water, and I could see turtles resting on the rocks. I stopped to take a few photos. Near the pond, I met a man who was painting the scenery on a canvas. His painting looked beautiful. He said he came every weekend to paint because the park inspired him. He showed me his other paintings, each one full of color and emotion. I said, "You are very talented," and he smiled, saying, "The park gives me peace, and I want to share that feeling with others." I watched him for a few minutes, and then I continued my walk. I saw a small food stand selling ice cream, popcorn, and lemonade. The sweet smell made me stop. I bought a cup of lemonade and sat on a bench to enjoy it. A few pigeons walked near my feet, hoping for crumbs. I laughed and tossed them a small piece of popcorn. One of them came closer and tilted its head as if saying thank you. A small boy sitting with his mother nearby watched me and said, "Can I feed them too?" I nodded and gave him some popcorn. He threw it carefully, and the pigeons moved closer. The boy clapped his hands happily, and his mother smiled at me. I said he is very kind to animals. She said he loves birds. Moments like this make the park feel like a friendly home. As the day went on, the park became even busier. A group of young people set up a small speaker and started dancing near the fountain. Their moves were energetic and fun. People stopped to watch and clap. I joined the crowd and smiled as the music filled the air. A few older people started moving to the rhythm too, laughing like children. It was beautiful to see different generations enjoying the same music together. When the song ended, everyone clapped loudly. The dancers bowed and thanked the crowd. I walked closer and told them they were very good. One of them said, "We come here every weekend to practice. The park is our stage." I said, "Keep dancing, you make people happy." They smiled proudly. As the sun began to set, the sky turned orange and purple. The air became cooler. I walked to the small bridge near the pond. From there, the reflection of the sunset on the water looked magical. People stood quietly, taking photos and enjoying the view. A man played a harmonica softly, and his music mixed with the sound of the wind and the water. I closed my eyes for a moment and listened. It was peaceful and perfect. When I opened my eyes again, the lights around the park began to turn on. The lamps along the path glowed softly, and the park looked like a dream. I walked slowly toward the gate, but I stopped when I saw a group of people setting up blankets for a small movie night on the grass. A big white screen stood in front of them, and a projector was ready. I decided to stay and watch. The movie started, and everyone clapped. It was a funny old film, and people laughed together as they watched. Families sat close, sharing popcorn. A little girl offered me some, and I said thank you. The stars appeared above us, shining through the darkening sky. Watching a movie under the stars felt magical. The air was cool and full of joy. When the movie ended, people clapped again, and the lights came back on. I stood up and stretched. It was time to go home, but I felt completely happy. As I walked out of the park, I looked back one more time. The lights reflected on the pond, and I could still hear faint music and laughter in the distance. I thought about everything that had happened that day. The ducks, the little girl with the red balloon, the kind musician, the lost dog, the children with the kite, the dancers, and the movie under the stars. Every visit to this park feels like a new adventure. It is a place full of life, kindness, and small miracles. When I reached home, I felt relaxed and thankful. I knew that I would go back to my favorite park again soon because it is not just a park to me. It is a place where I can see beauty, meet people, and feel peace in my heart. Whenever I think about it, I smile because my favorite park is where ordinary days become special memories. And every time I leave, I carry a little piece of that happiness with me, waiting for the next time I return to walk those green paths, listen to the birds, watch the sunset, and feel alive once again in the simple, beautiful world of my favorite park.